Welcome everyone to the NASM live stream. My name is Richey, and I'm here with my friend Mike Fantigrassi. Mike, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing well. We've got a lot of stuff going on here in New York City with the COVID-19, and so we're dealing with a lot of things, including homework and schoolwork for the kids, which is much harder with doing this online than it is sending them away to school and then having them show back up at the house. So it's challenging. How are you and the family doing there?
Yeah, very similar. We have young kids as well, so twin 6-year-olds. They're getting really good at YouTube and video games right now, so I'm hoping they turn pro here soon.
Yeah, well, good luck. Good luck to all of us, to be honest. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because of your background in nutrition and your skill set there. So first of all, just tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Mike Fantigrassi. I've been with NASM for 10 years now, and first started as a master instructor. And you were one of the people that helped train me for that role, Rick, with that. But prior to joining NASM, I basically worked in fitness most of my career. So I went to Florida State University, my undergraduate degree in food and nutrition, and I worked on the campus facility there for fitness. And then when I graduated, first job out of college was doing personal training. And then back then, we started using a program called Nutrition Analysis, which evolved into Apex Nutrition, which was used at 24-Hour Fitness. And now, .fit is kind of the iteration of that from Neil Spruce's company. So later on, I got my master's in exercise science. And I've been studying nutrition and doing nutrition coaching in conjunction with training my entire career. So it's really a passion of mine for that. And then since joining NASM, my most recent role, which I moved into, is Senior Director of Product Development. And so I was the product manager and helped, along with our internal team, develop the Certified Nutrition Coach course, which we launched last year.
I am doing it right now.
Nice.
I found myself with a little extra time on my hands, and I wanted to delve a little bit deeper into that topic. So I'm on the vitamins and minerals section right now, and I promptly get to the end of the quizzes, and I do really well up to the vitamins and minerals, and then nothing. I get nothing correct. I do not know what's going on with the vitamins and minerals, but they seem to all do this with me. And so I will sit down with that and actually study it, as opposed to reading it and just assuming that I can pass that little quiz at the end there. So I'm going to send out text to you to help me with some of these. Let's get into talking about some of the things that are going on with people right now. One big deal that's going on is a lot of people are on lockdown. So just with you and your family, you finding that there are any challenges that you're having with your diet? And I think it's good that, a lot of people have challenges with their diet. So when you find out that there's somebody who has such a focus on nutrition that also has challenges, then sometimes it's a little bit of a nice kind of bolster to us, because it humanizes some other people and lets us know kind of a direction that we can go in. So any challenges that you've been having?
Yeah, one thing with my nutrition, and it's something I know you don't like the term biohacking, but it's kind of like self-discovery. And I've really played around a lot with nutrition throughout my whole life, with just trying out different diets, seeing how it affects my energy levels and things like that with it. What I know what works for me really well right now, and I know what doesn't work for me with that. And so for me personally, and this is actually where I am doing well right now, is alcohol consumption, right? So if I have a couple of drinks, then there's this concept of dietary disinhibition, which basically means like, I messed up, so it doesn't matter. I'm just going to kind of do whatever, right? And so that's the trigger for me that leads to me just eating all the kids' food and, binge eating, that type of stuff, like carbohydrates and things like that. So one thing I haven't gotten to the habit of doing, and this year I've actually really cut back quite a bit on alcohol consumption. A little bit has to do with just the condition I have, ulcerative colitis, right? So like internal inflammation, that type of stuff. So I've been trying out some different diet protocols that help with that. Alcohol, for me at least, seems to kind of make it worse. So I changed things up. And what I noticed, though, is that that's led to a lot less of that situation, too, where it's, again, you have a couple of drinks and then all of a sudden you're eating one thing. And I know then the trigger is like if I have something kind of sweet, then it's just a downhill from there. And, the alcohol, so again, it causes disinhibition as well, too. So then you're not like thinking logically at that point. So that's a trigger, for me for that. And that's one thing where the way I avoid it is, again, not having it in the house. So if I don't have, 6 packs in the refrigerator, it's very tempting when it's staring at me too. And so a lot of that has to do communication with my spouse, as well too. So she goes to the store, one of the things she would do, which is very thoughtful, she would come back and say like, hey, I got you some beer and stuff like that. Right. So finally I have to tell her like, please don't buy me
Stop
any
being
beer.
so thoughtful. I have to
Yes.
tell my wife that all the time.
Yes.
Well, for me, I've got some dietary issues as well. A couple years ago, I was diagnosed with diabetes, and it's been challenging for me. But the same reason, when we look at the kids' food that's in this house, it's almost exclusive. Like the things that they eat are so carb dense. In the morning they want a croissant or they want cereal, and I want those things too. So I'm challenging myself with that. And a couple of things that I'm doing more now is I don't usually test my blood sugar very often. I'm doing that more often now just to make sure I'm doing okay. And I've been practicing a little bit of intermittent fasting. And really what I've been is not eating around noon. And so that way, when I start, and this is what I find with people too, is that kind of that first meal that you have in the day sets the standard for what the rest of your diet's going to look like throughout the day. And it's unfortunate that breakfast foods tend to be the junkiest foods on the planet. So you want a breakfast food, here's a glazed donut. You want breakfast food, here's high sugar cereal. You want breakfast food, here's a fatty meat, cheesy thing with eggs on top of an English muffin. So a lot of times when we eat poorly in the morning, it sets the stage and the cravings for what you're going to have throughout the day. And so do you find that that's not just me, that's what people are experiencing, that their first meal of the day kind of sets the standard for what their food intake looks like throughout?
Yeah, I would say that can vary quite a bit. That's one thing, when you look at nutrition and the way people react to different foods they eat and how it sets them up for the rest of the day. There is emerging research on chrononutrition where it looks at the timing of the day and how your body can process foods. Some of the stuff that I've seen recently indicates that your body is able to better process carbohydrates in the morning time, or you're getting less of that insulin response from them versus later at night from that with it. But, on the flip side too, for someone who's just starting to kind of develop better eating habits and things like that, when you start getting into minutia of timing everything and having days where maybe you're doing higher carbs and lower carbs and mixing stuff up, that's more advanced nutrition stuff. And it can overcomplicate things, cause some like stress, or people just kind of give up. So it really depends on where you're at with those different things, but that's where it comes back into self-experimentation, right? And so one of the things we do know is journaling is very effective. There's a lot of research out there that shows that helps with people if they are looking to lose weight. There's one study that showed over 12 weeks, it led to 50% more weight loss than people that weren't journaling, right? So if you're writing down what you eat, how it makes you feel, you can kind of start to identify what foods might work better for your body. Like if you did have, like, say, pancakes for breakfast with syrup and that type of stuff, see how that makes you feel the rest of the day. Does that increase your cravings for those foods or more carbs later in the day, or you're okay with it if you eat kind of more of a balanced lunch and dinner. Now, I will say that one of the things that we also know from nutrition is that protein is really important when it comes to someone dieting in particular. With it, it has, really good effect on satiety, making us feel full, right? And so if our goal is to kind of not have a lot of cravings and stuff like that, then we should include protein with each of our larger meals per day at the very least, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And if we have a more athletic population, then they may even need to eat more protein with like their snacks and stuff like that to be able to maximize muscle protein synthesis. So basically, we're looking to optimize, like we're working out, we want to make sure we're recovering from that. And one of the nice things very recently is they've come up with a number, which is 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, which for most people, that's going to be the right amount of protein to maximize that muscle protein synthesis. Another thing that they found is that if we're eating about 40 grams of protein post-workout after doing like a full body workout, again, that's going to maximize that muscle protein synthesis. So again, athletes, things like that, really important, if that's your goal to maintain or build muscle tissue. But for the average person, they could go a little bit lower than that, but still having that protein with each meal is going to be really important.
And that's 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight?
Yeah, so, if we're looking at pounds, it'd be 0.73 grams per pound of body weight. So if someone's 220 pounds, that's 100 kilos, and 1.6 grams times 100 kilos would be 160 grams of protein per day. So that would be that right amount of protein, for that person. If we were working off of, say, a 200-pound person, then it would be 150, roughly, round up to, say, 0.75 to make it a little easier on the math, but roughly 150 grams of protein per day. Now, you can go higher. Like in the CNC, we recommend up to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight, which works out nicely to 1 gram per pound of body weight on that one in pounds. So again, if someone's 220 pounds, you can go up to 220 grams of protein. And there is research that shows you can even go higher than that. And it's not going to hurt your kidneys. It's not dangerous to do that. It's just that now you don't need that protein's not really doing anything beneficial beyond. It's not going to build more muscle, I guess you could say, by having more.
Gotcha. Well, let me run through something. So my friend Peter Shankman tagged me in a post that he put up the other day, and the reason he put it up is I'll just read you what he said. He's got his camera and it's showing him walk to the refrigerator door, and you see the door, and he opens the door, and taped inside is a sign that says, "You are not hungry, you're bored. Close the damn door." So that was the sign that was put up in his refrigerator. And I thought it was brilliant for kind of a short-term solution. I think that if you're incredibly bored and locked down, there's only so many times you'll listen to yourself with that sign. But I thought it was a really good sign to have up. This kind of thing that you were talking about with bored eating and bored drinking, because other things are not happening. Social eating and social drinking are not really happening. So are there other options maybe besides the sign in the refrigerator door that can help people kind of figure out a way to control what they're doing? And you mentioned journaling being a great possibility, but what else is going on?
Yeah, so there's a researcher, Dr. Brian Wansink. Unfortunately, a lot of his research was retracted. I believe it was 15 studies, but a lot of the concepts I think are still very valid from the research that he did, which is basically if you do things to make it more difficult to either see the stuff, right, or if you put foods in places to where it's a little bit harder to get to, that is a barrier to where, maybe if it's a craving and I'm quickly just walking over to it, now there's this extra step and I'm like, do I really want to go through that extra step to do that, right? So a couple examples. If stuff's out on the countertops, right? So it could be like, say, chips and things like that. It may be just taking it out of sight. So now you don't have that visual cue that it's there. Another thing that he's talked about in research, this could be in work settings a lot of times, like candy dishes and things like that, or just in your house. But if you have a candy dish or somewhere it's easy just to grab stuff, then I know for me, it definitely leads to more eating of candy in the office if there's a dish or something like that there to grab it. We see that at NASM. There's one at the reception desk, and they'll put chocolates in there. They're gone. The hard candies are always left over though, so people definitely like that stuff. But
at these parties throw, and there's always these really kind of the junkier dishes, and maybe the cheese and the meat platter, and then there's the crudité. And at the end of the night, it doesn't matter how healthy group that you get in, it's the crudité tray that still has a lot of food left on it.
Yeah. So vice versa, you could put out more things like fruit and stuff like that you do want to eat more of to make it more visible. Same thing with the refrigerator. You can take stuff to where you could put your vegetables in a more visible place. You could take things that, if they're brownies or something like that were made for the kids, you can wrap them in foil or hide them. And that might help not trigger that, like I see it, I want to eat it thing that goes on. There's also ways in your pantry too, like in my house above our refrigerator, we have these cabinets, which I don't use for anything. And so if I did have something like say cookies or something like that, maybe, you had a trigger food, right? You could put it up there, just make it less visible so you kind of forget about it, right? Versus seeing it every time that you eat foods. So those are some things that someone could try. It's creating a barrier to make it not so easy to either see something that's tempting or even to access it.
I like that. We've done that recently with just knowing that things that are easy to grab are the ones that are likely going to get grabbed. And so we'll put out things like cashews or almonds. My wife might just chop up some cucumber and set it out. And I'm not a big fan of cucumber, but every once in a while, if I'm going to get up and I have some type of craving and that's out, I'll grab it. Because it's out, it's convenient, and most likely I am bored, which is why I'm going after food. So putting out a healthier option, I think, is really is. While we are here, we have our producer, Greg, that's online as well. Hey, Greg, I've got a question. Do you have any questions that have come in that may have to do with nutrition for us?
Yeah, we have one from Jen, and she wants to know how much nutrition is lost by using frozen fruits and veggies compared to fresh ones in a time like this.
Yeah, so great question. The answer is nothing. If anything, the frozen is more fresh than the fresh stuff. Modern agriculture, and this was true back when I was in college and we learned about frozen versus fresh food. So I'm sure the technology has improved even since then, but they would, when they're harvesting the stuff, they're able to harvest it and freeze it very quickly afterwards. And so that helps retain the nutrients versus thinking about where your food's coming from. Most of the food is shipped from different regions, even different places around the world. And so it's picked probably
keeping this question, and I'm going to go hang up on whoever's at my door.
Okay. But basically, something could be picked very earlier than optimal, because then it has to be shipped a long distance and you get it. And it's all that time that vegetable or fruit can be losing some nutrients compared to something that was picked at a more optimal time and flash frozen.
What does that mean? What does that flash frozen mean?
I mean, it just frozen very quickly. They just get it and they freeze it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's just a faster way of freezing something, versus it's not like they're just sticking it in a freezer like we would do with our stuff. They're using technology to get it cold very quickly, basically.
Okay. All right. Let's go into just another thing. I'm curious about what are some of your maybe biggest health concerns for people during this pandemic shutdown? Have you put any thought into what people are experiencing and what are some of the biggest concerns, and whether, that could be nutrition, it could be some other things, but what are you thinking about right now?
Yeah, I think that it's different probably where you're at, right? Like where you're at, Rick, is very different than Arizona for a couple reasons. Here, we're more spread out with the way that our infrastructure is set up. I live in a suburb area, so it's very easy and safe for me to go outside and go on a walk or go on a bike ride and things like that, and not encounter really anybody when I do that, or stay easily 6 to 100 feet away from people, where I think it'd be very difficult in New York City to do that. So some of the, I guess, positives I've seen is that a lot more people outside. Like, it's nice here. We're in our best weather in Arizona, 75, 80 degrees and sunny. And there are more people riding their bikes, more people hiking, more people doing outdoor activities and connecting, I think, with the outdoors than ever. So that's great. Sunlight's important for getting vitamin D. It's also important for a lot of other health benefits as well for that. And then, when it comes to the flip side, there is that the social distancing part, right? Where I think we are fortunate if we have families, as much as we might complain about our kids driving us crazy and stuff like that. It also is nice to be around other people. And so the concern I have is for more someone who's single by themselves. I think that can start to wear on you mentally and physically for not having that connection with other people.
I agree with that. That's understandable for sure. Hey, Greg, do you have another question that you might have lined up for me?
I do, and I'm going to mispronounce this name, so I apologize in advance, but I think it's Yoshua is wondering, what are your thoughts on the ketogenic diet for short-term versus long-term impact?
Yeah, so when it comes to really any diet out there, what again they know more recently from some of the meta-analysis is that if you equate for protein intake, most diets, as long as again they're not a crazy diet where you're doing something like super restrictive, or not even super restrictive, we're just taking your calories so low that it can be unhealthy or harmful to do that. And also we're not eliminating nutrients that we would need to stay healthy. So everything from keto, which would be a very low carb to no carb diet, all the way through the spectrum of like a niche diet, which would be very, very high carbohydrate diets, work equally well when you start to get to about the 6-month period of time with it. Ketogenic diets, I think, can be done in a way that's healthy and sustainable, but that's really, again, dependent on the person, if they enjoy eating those types of foods, if they're still including some vegetables in their diet, they're still including a little bit of fiber in their diet as well. And again, fiber intake should be about 25 grams per day for females, about 38 for males on that front with it. I've had some clients that I've worked with who've done ketogenic diets. I'm actually right now, again, just through self-experimentation, doing a very low carbohydrate ketogenic diet. A little bit different protocols than I've done in the past. And I'm finding for me, I have really good energy levels on it right now. I'm not actually doing a ton of exercise just because I have some of my weights and stuff at home, but my volume of exercise is actually lower than it was. And I'm actually still able to mountain bike on it, but I keep my intensities a little bit lower with it. But I've only been doing it for about 6 weeks now. So it's hard to say like, hey, what's the long-term effects for me personally on that one with it. My goal or my intention, though, is to slowly start to add some carbs back into my diet, probably get around that 20% to 30% area for it. And that again, just is more for sustainability, long-term, what I'm looking to do with it. But that's really true of a lot of different diets out there. So I'd say the most important thing is, can you do it for a long time? What's not going to work well is ketogenic diet, which you are going to lose a lot of glycogen and water weight, so you might lose 6 to 8 pounds just from that, and then flip it and go back to 50, 60% carbohydrates. And now all of a sudden you've gained like 8 to 10 pounds in glycogen and you super compensate extra water weight and stuff like that. And then because you haven't been eating carbohydrates, then you kind of start to really binge eat and your body's really good at putting weight back on too. So you have to be very careful transitioning off those type of diets. That's where most people get in trouble, is that there's a lot of ways to lose weight, but most people haven't figured out how to sustain that weight loss.
What kind of things are you eating with that many carbohydrates in the diet?
Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of protein, but not excessive amounts of protein. So one of the things that you have to balance with a ketogenic versus, say, a higher carb diet is, again, your protein's your protein. So when we're looking at it from anyone that's athletic population, someone working out, again, we're going to set that protein number first. And a good number, again, to shoot for is at 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. I go a little bit higher. I go closer to the 1 pound, 1 gram per pound of body weight from it. And then you have to say, okay, I need to supplement that with what I'm going to use for energy, because protein is not a good energy source. It's good for repair and recovery and things like that. It has to be converted to be able to use it like, and so you starve to death if you did a protein diet. You didn't eat enough carbs and fats. That's called rabbit starvation. Actually happened to settlers because they were eating very lean things like rabbits. And if you're getting 70% of your calories from protein, that will lead to that where you basically will, if you did it for long enough, you'd starve to death just because you're not going to have enough energy intake from it. So really, you want to have your protein set, and then for a ketogenic diet, the bulk of your calories are to come from fats, and then you're going to have a little bit of carbohydrates, and some of that again would come from things that are not really digestible, like fibers, soluble, insoluble fibers, things like that, some vegetables and stuff. But it's mostly, again, things that are good sources of fats in the diet. It could be a little bit fattier cuts of meat, so I personally will buy things like, say, a ribeye or something like that that's grass-fed, opposed to when I'm not doing like a keto type diet, then I would do more like a sirloin or tenderloin, which is a very lean cut of beef. I might do chicken thighs versus chicken breast because, again, they have a little bit more fat. But didn't supplement it with things like, almonds and different types of nuts. There could be different types of oils and butter, even things like that you add a little bit more to the diet with it. One nice thing about when you're losing weight is that weight loss itself is very healthy, and you can have a lot of different types of, let's put it this way, the act of losing weight makes you healthier. So even though you may be eating a lot of things that people traditionally think is being unhealthy, like it could be saturated fats and other stuff, you're burning through all this stuff. So it's not the same as being in a caloric surplus and then eating a lot of trans fat, or I wouldn't say trans fats because those are bad regardless, but things like saturated fats and stuff like that, which may be an issue for some people, although a lot of the research indicates that saturated fats aren't as harmful as they once thought they were.
Just curious also, I've got some other things. I'm going to go back to kind of a COVID situation again, and that some of the hospitals in New York City are supplementing and doing high dose supplements of vitamin C. We had a dear friend that had to be taken to the hospital that lived in our building, and my wife went up to open the door so that the paramedics could help her out, and she was COVID positive, and the paramedics looked at her and said, make sure that you and your family are taking lots of vitamin C. What are some of the benefits of vitamin C? And I know this is very specific to COVID, but like in general, and then have you heard anything about what those relations back to actual pathologies and maybe even COVID looks like?
So, as far as preventing or helping with COVID, the only thing I've seen is that they're testing out IV with vitamin C at very high doses with that. And so that's obviously not something we would do at home. With it, there is a little bit of research that shows that it doesn't help with preventing, say, the common cold, but it might help with getting over the cold a little bit faster. If you were deficient in vitamin C, so if we were taking in, I would say below 65 milligrams per day, that's kind of the lower limit of the daily value, to about 90, which is very easy to hit. Like if you're eating even just any type of food, they're probably going to fortify it with enough vitamin C to begin with. You really shouldn't have any issues with it. So taking extra vitamin C up to 2 grams per day. Some people take a lot of like higher doses and like the vitamin C drinks and stuff like that. But it's not going to offer you any protection from COVID doing that. And when we start to go above 2 grams per day, it can cause digestive issues, in particular diarrhea for that. And since vitamin C is water soluble, once you hit that threshold of what your body needs, you excrete the vitamin C. So a lot of times you're wasting money if you're taking high doses of it. And there's no supplement that you can take right now that they know of that's going to help bolster your immune system or prevent you from getting it, right? So it really again boils down to staying away from people, washing your hands. Other things that can help with your resiliency or immunity in general is exercising. So exercising helps with our immune system. Getting enough sleep, that's going to be really important. And it goes back to, again, alcohol consumption. Alcohol itself isn't going to lower your immune system, but alcohol does disrupt your deep sleep cycles. So in particular, with sleep, your deep sleeps and things like that. Also, you may feel like you're falling asleep easier, but you never get to those stages like REM sleep and deep sleep to where your body's doing that regeneration and recovery. So that, if you're doing it on a regular basis, can also affect your ability to recover, and then in turn make you more susceptible maybe to getting sick.
Interesting. So I was working on a panel with a sleep specialist, and she said that there's a difference between unconsciousness and sleep. And a lot of times when people drink, they might be unconscious, but that does not necessarily mean that they're sleeping and they're not getting all the benefits from sleep due to the alcohol intake and the lack of consciousness they have. So I think that's a really important point to make. Greg, do you have any other questions maybe we want to get out before we sign off?
Yes, we do. We've got one from Brittany on the chat that says, what is your recommendation for those individuals who are trying to gain muscle/weight at home right now?
So just weight gain in general, but focusing on healthy weight gain, not gaining body fat. It boils down to being in a caloric surplus, along with obviously doing resistance training for it. So if we talk about the stimulus side of it, what you need in order to trigger that muscle protein synthesis is doing the exercise. There's a lot of different rep ranges you could train in to do that. So if we're talking about OPT model, the phase 2 where you're doing supersets works really well for building muscle. Obviously phase 3, it's called hypertrophy, works well for that, where we're training, in that 6 to 12 rep range, but even doing some of the heavier stuff as well with it. So as long as you're progressing, with the weight training, the key is that you have to be adding a little bit of weight or doing more repetitions each time. That's going to create that stimulus we need. Frequency is also really important when it comes to hypertrophy, so make sure that we're hitting that muscle frequently enough to stimulate. But the nutrition we're looking at is post-workout. One of the things, again, they found from research is that, if you don't eat 2 hours after workout, you're not going to lose all your gains, but it still is important to, if we're looking to optimize muscle protein synthesis, to eat after workout. And so again, what we want to do is, if it's a full body workout, it could be 40 grams of protein and then having some carbohydrates along with that, depending on how much weight someone's looking to gain. It could be anywhere from like a 1-to-1 ratio. So 40 grams of protein, 40 grams of carbs, all the way up to a 1-to-4 ratio if someone's doing a lot of volume of training. The thing is, though, we don't need a lot of extra calories. So for building some extra muscle, we're really looking, especially if we want it to be lean muscle that we're gaining, and not like a dirty bulk where you're putting on a lot of fat with a muscle, then it's about 300 extra calories per day. And, that's a good starting place. And again, it comes back to, with this journaling and kind of understanding where you're at, right? So if you're eating 300 extra calories per day and your weight's not going up, that means that you're not eating enough calories. And so I got to eat a little bit more. But we don't want to go overboard and eat 2,000 extra calories per day. And then all of a sudden we're seeing that our body fat's going up a lot faster than our muscle.
I think something else to add in there, which right now it's problematic when you talk about the OPT model and we're looking at, you could go into hypertrophy, you go into the different phases, and people are stuck at home and they don't have, in general, the weights to help support that. So one of the things that I'd like to direct people to is still when you do something, even if it's endurance based, right? So let's say push-ups, and you can do 40 push-ups. It's going to be important to push yourself to those end and through those end repetitions. So if you can do 40 push-ups and you do 20, it's probably not that challenging, and you're not really going to have much of a hypertrophy response, but you can do endurance stuff and still gain muscle. It's not going to be as good, but if you're not pushing yourself to and through those end repetitions, then you're going to have a really hard time, asking your muscles and requiring your muscles to actually hypertrophy.
Yeah, and the thing too with bodyweight training, and I've played around with it a little bit in the past, and I'm actually starting to do a little bit more now. There's a lot of modifications you can do with like push-ups to make them very, very challenging, to where, again, you could fail at 5 repetitions if you're doing, like, say, a one-arm push-up or an archer push-up, where you have one arm next to you and the other arm extended out to the side. There's a lot of leg variation exercises or things you can do, just holding some extra stuff at home, to get very creative with that. But to Rick's point also, the research also shows you can actually do pretty high repetition ranges and still gain muscle from that as well too. It's not going to be probably as effective as if you're being able to stick to some of these better ranges when it comes to like the 6 to 12, but it can still be super effective. And if you have been training that way for a long time, it actually might be very beneficial to switch up your rep ranges and the way that you're doing stuff too.
Nice, very good. Greg, what else you got, brother?
That was it for questions, but a little housekeeping I'd like to do here, if you guys don't mind. Today at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, over on YouTube, we're going to be doing another live roundtable discussion with Prentice Rhodes and a group of instructors discussing how to handle uncertainty in current times. And then on Monday, we'll be back here with Rick, and I believe we're going to be talking about foam rolling and corrective exercise on Monday, and we'll likely do that around noon here on Facebook. So just a few housekeeping items there for you guys.
Excellent. Yeah, next Monday we'll have Kyle Stoll as a guest, and we'll go through some of the research when it comes to foam rolling, self-myofascial rolling. What is the research? What are the outcomes that you look at with that stuff? So we'll answer questions. We'll take questions with that as well. Right now, I just want to say thank you to Mike Fantigrassi. Thank you so much for being a part of this and letting us pick your brain for a little bit.
Yeah, it was great seeing you. Stay safe out there, and I'll chat with you guys later.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. This is the NASM live stream. Hope to see you next time.